Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Carolyn Clark, and it is my privilege to serve as your worship assistant today. I came to this church seeking people who shared my progressive values. I stay because I found much more than that, a beloved community that supports and nourishes me and calls me to service. So welcome. We are a congregation that values making a difference in our community and helping our members grow in health and depth. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people, people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. So whoever you are, wherever you have come from, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome and encouraged here. Unitarian Universalism is a faith of covenant, not creed. This means that Unitarian Universalists seek and use wisdom from many diverse sources. Honoring the value of spiritual freedom and diversity, we have no statement of doctrine. As a covenanted community, we agree to a set of principles that we all follow as we search for truth and how it applies to ethical living. We encourage everyone to visit our website, Brazos-UU.org, during this time of pandemic and in the midst of our planned building project for our new church home. The website and these weekly services are our church's only home during that time. To learn more about our community and what is happening, you are always welcome to join our email list for updates from our weekly eCasts and our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. For information about this, you can write to our administrator at admin@brazos-uu.org. If you might like to contribute your musical talents, for example, or if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for justice, those are among the many reasons we would love to hear from you. If you are interested in getting involved, you can find opportunities on our website. To join a meeting and have your voice heard by our members, you can find links to all of our meetings on our interactive website calendar at brazos-uu.org/calendar. Our service today remembers the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Civil Rights Movement, and the movements against racism and oppression that are active today.
Today's call to worship is words I wrote some years ago in the wake of the Michael Brown verdict. Unfortunately, they're still as relevant today as they were then. Let us wake up. Not just from the Sunday morning exhaustion or from the wish for a few more drowsy minutes in bed. Let us wake up to this world we live in, to its beauty and wonder, and also to its tragedy and pain. We must wake up to this reality, that not all in our world have the same things we do, however much or little that is. We must wake up to the idea that our wholeness, our lives, are only as complete as the lives of those around us, of those we are inextricably tied to in a great web of mutuality, of which all of us are part. We must stay woke, in the words of our friends and colleagues involved in Black Lives Matter, working every day for racial justice in our country. Let us wake up. Let us stay awake. Let us stay woke. And now, in this time and place, let us worship together.
Thank you, Reverend Christian. I invite you to light your own chalice if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning that we share together. Now, please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for its soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for its soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Keep the circle whole.
We continue our service with the time for all ages, a time when we welcome people of all ages, but especially our children and youth. Today I'm telling a story by Gail Forsyth Vale called Wake Up to Injustice. It's based upon the work of Martin Luther King Jr. There was once a man named Rip Van Winkle who liked to share stories and was kindly to children, but he avoided hard work or anything he thought unpleasant. One day, as the story goes, he found a nice grassy place on a mountain, and he fell fast asleep. But this was no ordinary nap. Rip Van Winkle slept there for more than 20 years. 20 years! What do you suppose he missed? As a matter of fact, the most important thing that he missed was the American Revolution. When he went up the mountain, he lived in a British colony. And when he came down 20 years later, he lived in the new United States. Now, this is an old and famous story, but would you be surprised to know that it was a favorite of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? It is one he told often. As a matter of fact, he told it to a huge crowd of Unitarian Universalists in 1966, a little more than 50 years ago now. He talked about the civil rights movement and urged all those who heard him to wake up, to not sleep through the big changes that were happening all around as Black people and their supporters worked to gain equality and rights. He asked white people in particular not to be asleep, not to ignore injustice. He urged people to wake up. Well, in recent years, a new set of leaders from those who are people of color are sending the same message Dr. King sent those 50 years ago. They're saying, wake up. Many of the injustices, much of the unfairness is still here. And there are new injustices too. Wake up. So I'm going to ask you, all of you, to help me deliver this message to all Unitarian Universalists and all people you speak to. Can you help us wake everyone up? So let's practice saying, you at home, me here, wake up to injustice. Wake up to injustice. Wake up to injustice. You can be loud. It's okay. You're at home. Wake up to injustice. And so many people who have not been paying attention, who have been asleep, are waking up to injustice, thanks to these new leaders and to each of us too. We'll talk more about this. We've talked about this a lot in our church, and we'll continue to talk about it. And perhaps you may want to talk with your family members about how they have woken up to injustice, and perhaps how they are waking up even today. Thank you so much. Let me invite you now into a time of prayer and quiet reflection. We'll begin first with a prayer by the Reverend Audette Fulbright Fulson. It's called Peacemakers of a New World. When I finish that, we'll enter into a time of silence and quiet reflection. She writes, Holy Spirit, God of ages and so many names, we gather once again to rejoice in the light offered to the world by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His walk on this earth was a gift to generations, and today we give thanks for that gift. We know that we are called together today, not simply to rejoice and be glad that such a man was given to us for a time, but rather to heed the calls he made to us, the same calls that reverberate now as they did when he was alive, the same calls you have made time and time again in a voice of justice that calls us throughout the ages. We're called to hear that same word of truth Dr. King spoke, that the hungry and poor are with us still. It is not enough to march and remember. The work we are called to do is feed hungry children, to wipe the tears from our siblings' eyes. It's not enough to sing a joyful song. We must also build the houses that will give shelter to every adult and child and allow them full security and dignity. We are called today to remember that we are not to judge one another by the color of our skins, but by the content of our character. In a world where our families are knit ever more tightly together, past old ideas of color and race, we know that the tyranny of fear and hatred still exists in our hearts. We know that racism still lurks like a viper around unexpected corners. And so we gather again to renew our promise to one another that we will be vigilant. We will be warriors and peacemakers of a new world, a world always dawning. Some call it the kingdom of God, which is always at hand among people who work and pray and give thanks together. Holy Spirit, on this day of remembrance, we do give thanks, and we're joyful for a time that we had our brother, our father, our pastor, our leader, Dr. King, with us. But we do not forget that the mantle he wore for a time has been passed now to us, to each of us here gathered, and is in our efforts, in our faithful struggle, and in our generous witness to a better world becoming, that we make our most powerful prayer of thanksgiving. Thank you, gracious one, for this day, for all our many gifts. In a spirit of remembrance, a spirit of gratitude and hope, we set forth once again with your guidance and strength to make the world anew. Amen. Please join me in a time of silence. Thank you again. Each week in our service, we take a time to share those joys and concerns, sorrows and milestones most on our hearts and minds. I invite you now, if you have such a thing, to share it in our chat box so that all of us might share it with you, to hold your burden or to celebrate your joy together. We lift up a few things in particular. We do remember today Martin Luther King Jr., his work, his legacy. We remember too all those ancestors who have worked to bring about a better world, many of them in anonymity. May each of their memories be a blessing. As we have each week for many weeks, we lift up all those who are suffering with coronavirus, with friends, with family, with those caring for those ill, with those affected by illness in other ways, such as job loss. We think about the safety of all of those who have to be out in the world doing essential work, exposing themselves daily, possibly to harm. May they be protected, and may all of us be glad for their sacrifice. We remember today, too, that Black lives really do matter as we strive for justice, equity, and anti-racism. If you haven't yet, there's certainly still time to go into the chat box and share with us those joys, sorrows, and milestones most on your heart. Know that anything that doesn't go written or spoken is still held by all of us in this community together.
And I say to you that I choose to be among the maladjusted. As my good friend Bill Coffin said, there are those who have criticized me and many of you for taking a stand against the war in Vietnam and for seeking to say to the nation that the issues of civil rights cannot be separated from the issues of peace. I want to say to you tonight that I intend to keep these issues mixed because they are mixed. Somewhere we must see that justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I have fought now too long and too hard against segregated public accommodations to end up at this point in my life segregating my moral concern. So let us stand in this convention knowing that on some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? On some positions, and on some positions, it is necessary for the moral individual to take a stand that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because it is right. And we say to our nation tonight, we say to our government, we even say to our FBI, we will not be harassed. We will not make a butchery of our conscience. We will not be intimidated, and we will be heard. Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. And I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
is no freedom, the wise man said. Let justice roll down when the poor cry out for shelter and bread. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary? Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let your love roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices rise up louder than the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Step by step, one by one, let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophet, but the dream lives on. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let justice roll down like a mighty stream.
I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
This quote from Martin Luther King came across one of my social media feeds this week, and I wanted to open my sermon by sharing it with you. He wrote, "To think incisively and to think for oneself is very difficult. We are prone to let our mental life become invaded by legions of half-truths, prejudices, and propaganda. At this point, I often wonder whether or not education is fulfilling its purpose. A great majority of the so-called educated people do not think logically and scientifically." End quote. As often happens when I read his words, they ring as true today as they did during his lifetime, and these certainly do. Tomorrow is our nation's celebration and remembrance of Martin Luther King Jr. We remember the work he did to seek equality for all, to see that those in most need could get the help they need, and to ensure basic rights for all. He was certainly a great man and a complicated figure. His private life was far from perfect, as we've increasingly learned since his death. But even his public life was a lot more complex than the story we are often told. He wasn't just the nearly sainted version we often think of today, but someone who was questioned, someone who was opposed even by those who had similar aims at times. He was someone who fell largely out of public favor when he did things like oppose the Vietnam War, or when he took Americans to task for failing to help those in poverty in their own country. Which makes me think of the last decade or so of our history, of things like Occupy Wall Street, or Black Lives Matter, or the Women's March, and all the many other movements for justice. Movements with noble aims who have been far from universally loved or supported. Movements whose tactics and ideas are often questioned, even by those, like many of us, who generally agree with their goals. So today, on the Sunday before MLK Day, it is long past time for us to look forward as well as back. We have a job today. Our job is to wake up and stay woke. By now, many, but not all of us, are familiar with the language of that second part of stay woke. It's a term of art, an expression from activists working for racial justice in our country. It means that we, especially those of us who identify as white, need to be aware of the problems in this country and to keep that awareness alive in our minds as we go about our daily business. Specifically, we need to keep aware that white privilege is something that affects us all, and that all lives in this country do not yet matter as much as they should. We know that, unfortunately, Black lives do not matter as much as white lives, and this is a problem we are called to do something about. I first got a Black Lives Matter button almost a decade ago now. I suppose it was 7 or so years. When I first got it, I wore it every day, and then, well, I didn't. Not because I chose not to, not really. I just set it aside and kind of forgot about it. Now, you don't need to wear a button or a wristband or the mask I now have that says Black Lives Matter in order to support it, but it was a good symbol for me. How easy it was for me to take that button off and suddenly not have to bear the burden of it. How lucky I am to just take the button off and not have to have those conversations. Or to take that button off and not even think about racism if I don't want to. And that, of course, is because I'm a white man in a country that systematically and nearly universally gives white men privilege over everyone else. My friends and colleagues of color or of other less privileged identities can't just take off a button and not have to worry about these things. They live with this every moment of every day. And I am a bad ally, that is, a white person committed to opposing oppression and racism, when I can set my button aside so easily. I was not, in the language of the movement, staying woke, but I'm trying to do better each and every day, and I am doing better. Not perfect, but better. So these days, I wear Black Lives Matter on my face mask. Boy, how things change over time. Don't think that would have been a strange thing to say a year ago. And I will continue to wear it out and about. So my reflection today is to invite you all to be a part of the conversation and the work. In coming months, we'll do more work about racial oppression. Just this week, some of us met to plan our Confronting Racism events later this year. And I'm very excited about that work. And when we have more to share on specifics, we will, but look for that. We live in a country that was founded on inequality despite our frequent claims to the contrary. We live in a country that still has great inequality, great oppressions, the collective and societal sins of classism and sexism, of homophobia, of elitism, of greed, of indifference, and what many have called our founding sin, racism. I say that knowing full well that not everyone will agree with me, but I say it still. We live in a country where Black and brown lives matter less than white ones, where people of color are much more likely to be killed and imprisoned, to live in poverty, to have fewer and less appealing opportunities in their lives. I recognize that the group I'm speaking to today is mostly white people, speaking to mostly white people. We must work to speak to those who are different from us and to work together. A colleague of mine, the Reverend John Cresswell, led a worship I went to several years ago, and I wish we could all hear his voice right now. Unfortunately, I don't think there was a recording made. back in those pre-pandemic days. One of the things he said is both obvious and profound, that we need to make relationships, all of us, across our differences. Our nation is increasingly, albeit informally, more segregated than ever. More and more people, especially white people, have no friends and indeed very few interactions with people of color. This congregation, like many Unitarian Universalist ones, is taking steps to change this. In our individual lives, this is the sort of relationship building we are called to. It's my hope that our conversation about racial justice won't just stay here in this service or within this congregation. I know that we believe Black lives matter and that we are committed to being a force for justice in our community and our world, of embracing the richness in all of our diversities. And I feel like this is something I've said over and over again these past few years. But did you ever feel like you just can't say something enough times? Like no matter how many times you say it, it needs to be said again. Like maybe you can't say I love you enough to your children or your parents or your partner, or you can't say I'm sorry enough times to make up for that mistake you made. I've preached a sermon a few times, not yet here in this congregation, called It's All One Thing. And this portion of the sermon today would easily be called It's Still All One Thing, because I say it once again. What is the one thing? I'll get there. Our culture, the power structures in which we live, the media, even our own brains, want to make the problems of the world little, unique, easily solvable things so that we can compartmentalize them and either quickly solve them or not worry too much about them. Because if we take care of that little problem, the one person who was murdered, or the one piece of property that needs to be cleaned up, or the one person who needs medical help, or this one little war zone way on the other side of the world, well, then everything will be all right again. But if this year's events have shown us anything, it's that it's not that simple. It's not easy. It's all one thing, folks, not a lot of different things. And what I mean by that is this: when any of us fail to see another human as fully human, that's a problem. When we fail to see our world or our environment as worthy and beautiful, important, and treat it as such, that's a problem. And this is the root of so many of these terrible stories we hear. Black men, especially young Black men, are too often treated as less than in this country. Israelis and Palestinians on the other side of the world have become so enmeshed in their struggles and their constant conflict that they can no longer see one another as fully human. And we're no better. This is the thing. You should not have to be good enough to not get shot in your own neighborhood. You shouldn't have to be good enough to not be deported back to a place where you are not safe. When we decide, usually unconsciously, that others don't belong, we marginalize and oppress them. We deny basic rights and freedoms, shelter and food, not because we're bad people or because the people opposing us are bad people necessarily. This is about systemic evil, which I've spoken about before. Systemic evil is a really important concept, so I'll explain it one more time, and many, many more times after this, don't worry. The idea is that relatively few people are actually out there intending to do bad things to others. But instead, our culture, our society, carefully hides bad acts behind layers of systems so that we rarely think our actions are having bad consequences for anyone anywhere. We live in a country where 1 in 3 Black men will spend some time in prison during their lives. Most of us don't want that to be the truth, and yet we participate in a governmental system in which that is the truth. We live in a country where white people can storm our nation's Capitol building and somehow think that they will escape all consequences. And though arrests have been happening, I'll hold my breath and see how much consequences these folks actually face. We live in a country and a time in which white people and men and straight people, to give just a few examples of privilege, are still continually given advantages that others aren't. And not because we've somehow earned them. I haven't done anything to deserve being a white, straight man in America, and yet I benefit from all of those things. We live in a world where some are born into nurturing, resource rich environments, while many are born into poverty and violence and struggle. A church in the Boston area, one I'm familiar with and used to attend on occasion, has made an interesting and I think powerful commitment. They have said that they will not make any decision, will not take any action that results in something that only white people can be successful at. In other words, they want to be a place where people of color are welcome, are a real part of community life, and are important. This, it should be noted, is often not the case in our culture. What would it be like if our church, or if each of us in our businesses, in our organizations, everywhere, made a commitment to take actions that led to a world where all people have a real chance to be successful? Of course, we want to do that, but are we willing to follow through with it? The question for us today is who belongs? Who belongs in our families or in our churches, in our towns and cities, our country and our world? Because if the answer isn't everyone, that every single one has a place where they belong, where they are welcome, then we can't rest. And so I say this: you belong here as each of us belongs here, and I belong here. This is our congregation. We are welcome. We are loved. We have to extend that love and welcome evermore. So remember, when you hear another tragic story, remember that it's not just another life lost or another person hurt, another person starving, because it's all one thing, friends. And until we know that so deeply in our bones, we can never forget it. We will be working to make our world a better place. We are called to confront injustice, to speak our truth, to be a beacon for others. Starting the conversation is not a final step, but merely the next one as we work to make a better Texas, a better country, a better world. And so as people of color and white allies are committed to dismantling racism, we must be bold and unwavering in our commitment and in our voice. I don't know all of the specific steps we might and should take. We'll figure those out together. Because it's all one thing, friends. And we are all one people. Amen.
If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month, we are proud to continue to support the Brazos Valley Food Bank. Because of the economic crisis caused by the pandemic, the need for food in our community is great, and that need will only grow. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope do we find there? Please be as generous as you can. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom, and at the top, you will see a Donate Here tab. Click on it to see donation options. We give thanks for these gifts that we have given, for those we receive, and we give thanks for each other.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? It sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. It sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? It sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad the trouble don't last always. I'm so glad the trouble don't last always. I'm so glad the trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Now please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again. Thank you.
Friends, I'm so thankful for the work and the example and the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We know that it is up to all of us, each and every one, to continue moving that legacy forward now, to seek an end to all oppressions, to make peace with our fellow humans all over the world. This is the task we have been handed. May we have the strength and the courage and the empathy and compassion to do it well. Our worship has ended, and now our service begins.